Hello everybody and welcome to Augmented Feedback, Chapter 11 of Motor Learning. I'm Coach Matt. Let's get rolling. Alright, there's what we're going to be learning today. Different kinds of feedback here. We did have a lab the other day where we kind of talked about what kind of feedback. So this is going to be augmented, so different types of feedback and various properties to go along with that. So normally we think of feedback as performance related. So you give feedback as a generic term for whatever you're going to tell them about the performance of that motor. That's usually a task intrinsic feedback, and then that would be your touch, your proprioception, your vision, your auditory. Does the ball go in? Did the ball go straight? Depending on what sport you're playing. Augmented feedback is information about the performance that supplements that sensory feedback. So after the player hits the ball, my brother, when he plays golf, there's going to be a lot of golf things here, just to warn you. When my brother hits a golf ball, he does not want feedback immediately. Like, he can top the ball and it goes 6 inches. He wants to sit there and think about it for about 5 seconds after his swing before you can say anything to him, because he is checking all of that intrinsic proprioceptive feedback. Do I feel like I hit my positions at the top on the way down? Did I address it? He's going through all his follow through. Was he in balance? He has like a checklist in his head. He's a little bit autistic, so he does kind of have that in him there. So he's like literally checking off in his head in those 5 seconds. Did I do this? Did I do this? Did I do this? Did I do this? And then he'll look at you and ask for feedback if he wants it. So augmented feedback is a supplement to that feedback, usually coming from an external source to that performer, aka coach or teacher. Let's say an augmented feedback is enhancing the task intrinsic feedback that a person normally would have. So here's what that would kind of look like. So you'd have all your sensory feedback. I know this is a tougher thing here. So you'd have your movement related stuff, and then the inherent feedback that we just talked about. And then there's the augmented feedback. So you would have the before movement, which would be modeling and instruction, which are what most teachers and professionals are going to be doing. Then during the movement, you're going to have your concurrent feedback and the guidance that you can give them. This would be like teaching cues sometimes that they're thinking about as they're going. This is what my brother's checking off when he finishes his shot. And then there's the after movement. And these are the two we're going to talk about the most today, is the outcome and then the goal outcome. Your kinetic perception and performance. Knowledge of performance and knowledge of results are what we're going to get into. So here's the book's determinations of these. Inherent feedback is providing natural consequences of an action. Sometimes it's called intrinsic feedback. That's what we called it on the last slide here. And then augmenting, we kind of already gone over this. Information about the measured performance. And you just need to make sure you have these two known. So we have inherent feedback and intrinsic feedback are very similar. Augmented feedback and extrinsic feedback are also similar. These are the ones that will be on your quiz. So make sure you're knowing these. So the timing, on that chart that we had a little bit ago, so you had your time before, during, and after. And usually most people are wanting after the movement. In my jump shots, I'll have students I teach them to shoot it like Stephen Curry. One of the good things he's done is when your feet come off the ground, that's when your wrist flips over for the shot. And I want that. And so I'll have my students have a partner that will either clap or snap their finger when their feet come off the ground. So they can have a during the movement feedback of when my wrist should be flipping over. And it's when their feet come off the ground. So very rarely do you have you could have a guidance device of some sort. In this case, it would be an auditory thing. I've seen some people that have, at one point I took a probably 3x3 foam square and I drilled a hole through it and I tied it with a Velcro strip to the bicep of my basketball players. And so as they were shooting, they could feel that box go up, because I had a guy that was collapsing his elbow and his forearm together, or his forearm and his bicep together, so his wrist was almost touching his shoulder as he was shooting. He would cock it back to his shoulder and then shoot it. I wanted him to feel that space, and so I took that foam block and tied it to his bicep so he could feel that square position go all the way up above his head. So there are some things that are guidance devices that'll do a during movement to let them know if they did it correctly or not. All right, so we're going to have this one here. Here's one version of this. So a knowledge of results. So this may be simple yes or no. Did you achieve the goal that you were going for? Did the ball go in the hoop? But it may be more complex about direction and the amount of error. So archery is a good one for this. The shot was in the blue circle at 9 o'clock. So then you'd have your knowledge of performance. So this would be information about the movements that are part of the skill. So in archery, that would be, I pulled the bow to the left and released at the release of the arrow. So as I released, I pulled the bow to the left. I mean, that'd be for a lefty. Maybe if you're righty, your left arm would pull left. Yeah, maybe, but that's what caused it to go to the left, or made the arrow go to the side. Or they usually in archery, at least when I've taught it, I did like 5 years of summer camp archery. And as you release it from your lip, because I always put my middle finger touching the corner of my lip, as they release, they actually pull to the right, and it pulls the string out and around, and then the string ends up slapping them in the wrist, and yeah, it ends up being a pretty good find. Good times there. By the way, on your first shot, get a bullseye, never shoot another one for that group the rest of the week. Always impresses them. All right, so here's what our book defines these as. I'm just going to let you look at those. Those are just the ones that you'll be quizzed over. All right, so we've kind of worked through, this is our last section for this class here. So we started out very early on with our 3 phases of motor learning here. Is you have your stimulus identification, response selection, and then the program. So I see it, I stop in a car. I respond, I need to stop, and then I movement program, move right foot over to brake. And then after that, you're going to have your motor program. So you say, I'm going to hit the brake. So then you pull that motor program, it goes to your spinal cord, to your muscles, runs it, and then you're like, your proprioceptive feedback tells me, did I hit the button? Or did I hit the brake? Or did I hit the gas by accident? Don't do that, by the way. And then your extraperceptive feedback is, I see that the car is stopping. Well, now we have the measured outcomes here. So this is what we're adding to it here. So in driving a car, my knowledge of the result was I wanted to stop the car before it hit the car in front of me, or stop at the light so that I don't get a ticket. So my knowledge of performance is, and I may or may not have done this on my airport drive today, I may have gone through a red light because my knowledge of results was hit the gas to go a little faster because I've been sitting at this light for 3 red lights and I pushed my way through it. I may or may not have done this. So my knowledge of performance was I wanted to get through the light, but my results was I may or may not have gone through it when my back tire was still behind the white line when it turned red. So my knowledge of results may have not have been the performance I was going for, which was get through the yellow light legally. Thank goodness there was no cop, which may or may not have happened. Functions of your augmented feedback. So you're going to use these things as this is an augmented after they already know what they're doing or after they see the results. You are either going to motivate or discourage the learner. You're going to direct the learner's focus and attention. You're going to provide information about errors to be corrected. And then creates sometimes your augmented feedback could create a dependency, potentially leading to problems later. So is augmented feedback necessary for a person to learn a motor skill? Yes, it can be, because it gives you that, critical sensory information. Gives those pathways may not be available due to injury, or a person cannot use the sensory feedback even if it's available due to lack of experience. Totally saw this in golf, where I had this guy that was like, man, trying the weird stuff just works when I do it. And I'm like, well, generally in golf, if it feels right, it probably wasn't. Because they just don't have the sensory feedback to know if what they were doing was correct. On the other hand, no, it's not essential for learning any motor skills that are inherently provide sufficient task intrinsic feedback. Yesterday, we did a lab where we were doing the labyrinth with the ball, or the little metal ball. And you got pretty quick feedback. If it fell down in one of the holes, I failed, grab another one, try again. You had an detectable external reference in that environment. If it fell down the thing, I failed, I need to try again, I need to try this a little differently. And the person uses that to determine the appropriateness of the action. Did you go too far? Did you unbalance? Did you sneeze in the middle of it? Who knows? So you could improve your skill level of learning, but it's not necessary. But it could go so far that it hinders all learning, and I already kind of said that. So if a beginner becomes dependent on augmented feedback, that will not be available later. So maybe while they're playing golf, let's say, they're used to you being standing there on the driving range, and so now that you're not standing there, now they can't hit the ball correctly. And so they are dependent on the fact that coach has to be standing there for me to do well. Let's see. So some of the content is going to be your error versus correct performance. So your error information is more effective than facilitating skill learning that can be focused on error-relating information to facilitate that skill acquisition, and it can focus on correct performance information to continue to motivate the person. See, we are just the same thing here. Nope, keep going. So indirect influences, so your knowledge of a result encourages the learner to keep practicing. That's what we would hope. And the results of these additional practices are what influences that learning. And it could have a direct effect on learning because the facilitated was good, learning was good feedback. Some additional focusing properties is when your knowledge of result directs the learner to think about externally directed information. So you're trying to focus them on a specific thing. It may be in shooting, because in shooting I have them do set, fire, hold. So I'd be working on, I want you to work on hold today. So I'm directing their focus to their fingers, are their first and second fingers on the shot line? Is their offhand pointed straight at the sky with all 5 fingers or all 4 fingers and their thumb? So I'm directing their focus to something else, and as well as then they can see their knowledge of performance. As I focus on this, does my shot go in? I currently have one guy that he's a decent shooter. He's fairly tall, and he tends to shoot a real line drive shot. And it's usually because he's trying to use so much arm, so I tell him to get his hips lower as he's shooting. So I'm directing his external focus to get a little, or internally focused, I should say, to get my hips lower so that I can rise up a little higher, and then all of a sudden his arch goes up and he makes more shots. So that feedback can be scheduled, and we did this in our thing the other day where we had him walk across the room there. You can schedule the feedback so that there's more informational content there. Without any detrimental effects. You don't want to go too often. Some of the informational properties would be define the basis for making corrections on the next attempt. So on the next one, I want you to try this. Brings the performance closer to the values that characterize more skilled performance, just trying to get them better at what they're doing. If they're doing archery, trying to get a little closer to the center. Darts, guiding that learner towards the movement goal. And then helping that learner problem solve. I have a thing in my jump shooting. I want them to hold their finish. They check, is my dominant hand, are the fingers down, is the offhand up? Are my feet square when I finish the shot, or are they pointed to the wrong side, or pointed to the side? All those things are problem solving things for them to check after their shot. So what effect does frequency of augmented feedback have on the performance and retention of that motor skill? So the more frequent your feedback can be, the better their performance, but the less you give them augmented feedback, the better the retention is going to be when you're not there. So I gotta admit about my mother on this one. I've taught my mom golf ever since she started playing golf. And she has this curse that when I'm standing there, she hits it perfectly. But when I'm not standing there, she goes out on the golf course and she'll call me up. Matthew, yes, she uses my full name. Matthew, I cannot hit the ball today. I got a whatever high score. You need to come play golf with me or go to the range with me, and I will stand behind her for every single shot for the entire round. And she'll shoot a wonderful round of golf. And it's because every time she swings, she wants to know, what did I do wrong on that swing? So I think I may have handicapped her a little bit by giving her so much feedback after every single shot that her retention to be able to do it when I wasn't there was not as high. So being very cautious of how often you say things or how often you give them that augmented feedback after their shot, or after whatever their sport they're doing, is just be very careful not to overdo it, or allowing your learner to become dependent on that. So, dependency producing properties. So when giving feedback, give it to, when feedback that contains information for error correction is given frequently, it tends to guide behavior towards that goal movement. So yes, you do want that. Guidance is fine when you're present, but the learner can also become dependent on that guidance, resulting in poor performance when the guidance is removed. Kind of what happened to my mother. So what feedback do you want to give? So a good rule of thumb on here is to decide what error is most fundamental and focus on that. Because you don't want to give too much information. And I do this in shooting and in golf, as I just kind of watch their shot or watch their swing. I'm like, all right, let's start with this. Because I can see that there are so many things wrong. But I need to take, one, if you give them too much information, they won't have enough, or it will just be overwhelming and they won't know what to focus on. So a good rule of thumb is to just kind of pick the worst error, and it sometimes maybe will be the first error as well. So like in a golf swing, I'm going to start with their grip. Is their grip in a good position? If the grip is good, then I'm going to move on to the 9 o'clock position on the way back. So when the club is parallel to the ground, is that in a good position? After that, I'm going to go to the top, and I just kind of work my way through it to what's the biggest error that I can correct today. And same thing with shooting is I start with their setup. Is that good? Then I move on to something else, because sometimes just changing their setup will be the biggest error right now, and then some of the other things will just correct themselves. Well, it won't correct themselves, but as they get improved by getting their setup correct, the next one will go. And then when they come back to me the next time, all right, let's look at what the next biggest error is. Videos are awesome. Man, that has been one of the best things in coaching that I have ever come up with. I use this app called Coach's Eye. It's not available anymore. I'm really mad about it. But I could take multiple videos side by side on my phone. I could take a slow motion video, and I could just go, here's what my angle looks like, or here's what a professional's. I would use JJ Redick for basketball. I would use Tiger Woods for golf. So going those ways. So videos in our book says it's not always usual and can provide too much information. Man, my golf swing looks so much different than what I see in videos. So providing real-time feedback facilitates learning only if supplemented with additional cueing. So like after you've given them augmented feedback, then go to video and go from there. So say video recording, the effectiveness of video replays depend on the skill and level of the learner. If your learner is a brand new learner, videos are probably not going to help. I found that with my high school basketball players, videos are great because they've probably been shooting a ball since they were a toddler. Well, probably not quite. Probably in first, second, third grade, they've been throwing a ball at a hoop. And having that after they've been doing it for a while, so say for a beginner, the instructor, it must be the most critical to information in the video. Most of your students, when they see themselves, all they're going to see is the highlight reel, and they're not going to see the mechanics that they need to be working on. But for an advanced performer, input from an instructor becomes less important, although they may still have a greater benefit from that instructor's verbal cues and attention directing instructions. I can say that when it comes to video recording, iPhones are awesome now. Being able to do slow motion video on a phone, I will just put it on top of a water bottle, on top of a chair, and hit record, and have students send me videos of their shot. I've got students from my last school that I worked at still sending me videos of their jump shot saying, Coach, can you critique this real quick? And I'm like, send me a slow-mo video, and I will do a screen record about what I'm seeing. It's really awesome. Take a standing break if you are at home, and if we're doing this in person, then take a standing break. So I think we already kind of did our content here. So we already kind of know what these two here. So your kinetic or knowledge of result helps your learner with trial and error, helps them adapt to an external focus. Your knowledge of results helps them according to each specific movement, like a gymnastics stunt. Oh man, I've done so much of that. But it produces specific kinematic, kinetic, and muscular activity profiles, which we'll get into that more in biomechanics next quarter. So when you compare these two together, the knowledge of performance gives you precise information on how to change your movement pattern. The knowledge of performance can lead to internal focus, though there often needs to be an expert to provide that cueing to understand your knowledge of performance. Now, your knowledge of results can be better engaging for problem-solving situations. So, performance versus result is always going to be one of your concepts that you have to figure out, and it's going to somewhat depend on your learner. Some are better with the performance, some are better with the results. So absolute and relative feedback of frequency. So absolute frequency refers to the total number of feedback presentations given to the learner across the set of trials. When we did the walk across the room experiment, I believe our learner asked for it out of the 10 trials. He asked for it on 3 of them. So that would be your absolute number. Your relative frequency would refer to the percentage. So if they did 3 out of 10, that would be 30%. So there's a couple other ones here. Your terminal augmented feedback provides a person or applied after. So after it has ended. So that'd be terminal after. And then concurrent feedback would provide it while the person is performing a skill. I think we had these things earlier. There's just a little more information here. Attention is directed away from the critical task and towards the augmented feedback so the learner becomes dependent on it. Just be careful of that one. Yeah, we already kind of went over that on a different slide. A faded frequency is when you start it early. You give them a whole lot of information at the beginning, a lot of frequency. This is great when you have a group of people and you're working with like 5 people. You give them lots of feedback at the beginning and you're working your way person to person to person to person as quick as you can. And then you start backing off and letting them hit 4 or 5 shots or take 4 or 5 jumpers and back off more and more and more. And you're tailoring that feedback depending on the capabilities. The ultimate goal here is to generate the learner's capability to produce the action without being dependent on your feedback. So your precise feedback, and this one's kind of interesting, and this is going to make this kind of make more sense, is depends on the magnitude of error. So it creates kind of a natural fading for error feedback. So the precise feedback is like only if the shot or is without of range of acceptability. And I definitely do this in golf. Another one from my mother. When my mom would fade the ball to the right 2 yards, she would look at me, what did I do wrong? It didn't go perfectly straight. I'm like, that's a fine shot. You're still in the fairway. It's still an acceptable outcome for the shot. So I didn't feel that I needed to give her feedback because it wasn't the perfect shot. So that way I would say, let's just take this as golf, the magnitude of error. These 4 shots here were in the fairway. So I don't feel like if it's in the fairway, I need to give her any augmented feedback. These 3 here were in the first cut of rough, or a fringe, I guess they call it. So it'd be an acceptable shot, but not a great shot. Great shots would be in the middle here. Now these here are totally off the fairway in the long stuff that's going to take a lot of work. So those 3 are the ones that I would say I probably needed to give feedback for. So summative feedback is when you take like a set of 5 shots and you say, well, on those 5, I saw this. And so you need to work on this. So you would summarize a group of trials rather than an individual shot or swing. So there is an optimal number of trials to include summary feedback reports with either too few or 2 numbers on there. So an every trial feedback would be like a 1 trial thing, or maybe it's a summarizing thing, say after 100 trials. It will also keep you from getting dependent on there, and that's where this is going to come in here. So this is a 1996 thing here, so the rate of error. So a novice person here, so let's see what I got here, was function for learner experience and task complexity. For both simple, which would be the blue, and complex tasks, learners benefited from larger summaries. So after every single trial, this was their relative standard, or their rate of error. So 250, lower is better in this chart. So, however, novices only benefited from larger summaries, and they did on a simple task. But when a complex task came, they did worse when they had, every 5-10 things. So a golf swing is a fairly complex thing. So a novice did worse when they had a complex thing. Now, when you have a more experienced learner, they immediately do better after being 5 trials. So after 5 swings, then an experienced learner, you ask them what they did wrong. So if I was trying to coach, say, an NAIA college golfer, giving them feedback after 5 swings on a rather than every swing, they're going to have more learning and have less error. So let's just say these is, were they in the fairway or not in golf. And if I give them every 15, they did actually even better. So I'd watch them for 15 swings and then give them summative feedback of what I saw. So summary feedback might prevent dependence-producing effects of frequent feedback. Summative feedback might produce more stable movements. And summative feedback appears to encourage learners to analyze their inherent movement-producing feedback, so all the things that they've learned and what they're feeling. Average feedback is also a type of summative feedback, fairly similar, but it would be statistically average of 2 or more trials rather than the result of any one. So again, trying to block that dependency-producing results, and gives the instructor time to formulate a more complete idea of a learner's tendency. I totally do this when I'm watching somebody shoot a jumper for the first time. I will let them shoot probably 10 jump shots, usually from the elbow, because I don't want them shooting a 3 for their summary thing. And I also work with high schoolers most of the time when it comes to coaching. If I was doing an NAIA level college basketball player, I might be doing it off of their 3-point shot, because they take a whole lot more of them, and that's a more average shot for them. And then that allows me to give them more of an average feedback rather than a immediate one. So this one here shows us that they were trying to time it, and let's just say this was our walk across the room experiment. So if we give them the timing error on every single trial, this is how close they were to 10 seconds. If we give them a summary every 5 trials, well, after 5 trials, I'm seeing that you were a little bit too fast or a little bit too slow. A 5 trial average would actually be, we took all 5 of them that they tried and then said, okay, you were 0.4 too fast as an average on those 5 trials. And what they found here was in these retention intervals is every 5 average, telling the average of what you're seeing or the average error was better than 15. So it seems like there is a sweet spot here when it comes to the timing of your errors or timing of your feedback. Take another standing break. 5 more slides. So giving feedback during movement, so we call this concurrent feedback, is augmented feedback that goes on immediately. And we talked about the snapping of the finger when their feet come off the ground earlier. Physically restricting their movement also is a form of this kind of congruent feedback. Let's say physically restrictive guidance techniques represent a large class of methods of which the learner is forced to produce the correct movement. This could be in many different versions. Man, I have seen a circular device that basically looked like a big PVC pipe that you would pull a golf club on. And you would literally ride, and I mean, it doesn't actually, that's not how a golf swing goes. You don't go up and down the exact same plane on your backswing and your downswing. So it was physically restricting the technique to try to get some of the correct movements. I also have a golf club that's got hinges in it, so that you have to hit certain positions or it breaks. And I took this to a PGA pro that was giving golf lessons to my mom and to my brother, and he couldn't swing it. This thing that physically restricted him, and this guy's a scratch golfer, and also was giving golf lessons to my family. That's when they got past my point of view, or my level of expertise. So feedback after the movement, empty feedback delays are almost never systematic on learning, or never good. So one exception is instantaneous feedback, similar to the effects of concurrent feedback. So intervening activities of a different task generally degrade learning. So, doing a totally, swinging a baseball bat to try to learn a golf swing. When you're trying to measure a retention type test. Or when a golfer tries to play, or baseball player tries to play golf, they almost always hit it to the right, because softball swings or baseball swings is not the same rotation of the wrist as a golf swing. And it's because they hold that wrist angle as long as possible before flipping it over. And if you do that in golf, you're going to hit it to the right. Trials delay feedback. Couple more things here. So a procedure in which the presentation of the feedback is delayed. During the delay, the learner practices one or more other trials. So this would be like they hit a golf swing, and then they think about it like my brother likes to do, and then they take 2 more practice swings. Then you give them feedback. So this is not detrimental and may actually be more effective for the learner than presenting feedback after every single trial. So letting them try it again before you give them feedback. So intervening subjects the estimations. Learning is enhanced when processing of that inherent feedback occurs before the augmented feedback is provided from you. This is internal from you. And then there are negative effects from presenting feedback on every single trial. We've said this kind of multiple times here. 2 more things. So here's just a chart of what those 3 things we just talked about were. So your movement begins. You have your concurrent feedback, including guidance. So that's what happened during the movement. So that was tougher to do. The movement ends, and having a feedback delay interval where they either think about it or try it a couple more times. Then your feedback is provided. Post-feedback gives them a delay time to think about it and what you're trying to do, and then the next movement begins. All right, so this next slide is not part of your quizzes. It's just interesting. So there is a little bit of biofeedback that's coming when it comes to theory. So your augmented form of task intrinsic feedback is related to the activity. So the physiological processes like heart rate, blood pressure, muscle activity. So the electromyo EMG feedback is most common in motor skill learning. So there is a debate to whether this form of augmented feedback is useful for motor skill learning. So this would be like buzzing you when you miss. You ever guys played that old, you guys probably never played it, about Operation, when you were trying to grab something, but if you hit the sides, it would and make a big noise and startle you. So this could result in a dependency of that type of feedback. So we don't know if it's all going to work out, but having some sort of bioelectrical, myographical feedback is just kind of an interesting thing of where things are going.
Final variables we're analyzing that are out of an athlete's control are the coaches. Some are like drill sergeant screamers, and some are supportive father figures. So the question is, which coaching style is more effective? Intimidation or encouragement? Fear or fatherly love? To analyze how these coaching styles affect a player's performance, we brought in 2 coaches with drastically different styles to put a young player to the test.
We're going to take an impressionable college basketball player, put him on the free throw line, and ask him to hit 10 free throws Each time, he'll be coached by a different style. You're gonna play the part of the positive coach, constant reinforcement, making sure that he feels good about what he's doing. You're gonna play the part of the aggressive coach. You're gonna make him feel like maybe he could do better even if he's hitting every shot. After each round of 10, we're gonna go back and get his vital signs to see if it's physically affecting him. Most importantly, we're gonna have the results of how many shots out of 10 he hits, so we can determine, did the style have anything to do with his performance? You ready? Alrighty, let's do it.
Our test subject is an impressionable young college player from Southern California, Kevin Cross. We wire him up with medical sensors and a heart rate monitor to see how his body responds to our experiment.
All right, so your heart rate when you first got here was about 52, 53 beats. It's starting to raise just a little bit. You know, there's anticipation of you getting ready to do this. But right now your heart rate's really low, so you seem quite relaxed and ready to go make some shots.
When I play ball, I try to stay relaxed, pretty laid-back person. When I come to the line, it's the same repetition, same shot every single time.
Now it's time for some positive reinforcement.
Coach Lynch?
Good shot. That's sweet. That's sweet. I love it. I love it. I love it. My coaching style is built around love and respect. That's okay. Don't worry about that, man. Come back and knock this one out. We get on the same page. Excellent. Excellent. I get my best results from them.
Regardless of the sport they're playing, athletes are subjected to different coaching styles. Just ask the pros.
The older you get, the less the yelling should come. Once you're in college, you're in the NFL, they should be able to tell you what you need to do. You should be able to do it and play like a professional, do like it's your job.
I don't understand how you're gonna tell somebody good job if you know dang well it wasn't a good job. You just lying. Some coaches feel like they have to baby certain players.
That's all right. Don't worry about that. We'll just get right
Seldom is heard a discouraging word from Coach Lynch.
back. Good shot.
He makes 7 for 10.
Nice. I see it. Good job, man.
More importantly, his heart rate stays low, which means he's still calm, emotions in check. We want to change that.
All right, time for the next round. Coach Maddox?
I really pride myself on teaching my players to be mentally tough more than anything. I'll do whatever I need to do to get that player to be motivated, whether it's yell at him, get in his face.
Now, look, I don't know who's been coaching you, and I don't know what kind of attitude that you want to bring. Your girlfriend, your mom, all your friends, they've been kissing your ass. Well, let me tell you what, I'm not here to kiss your ass. Give him the ball. Let's see what he's got. Knock these free throws down. We need these now. That's the best you got? And you think you're good enough to play?
I don't like to be screamed at. I'd rather you just talk to me. So if I made a mistake, just talk to me, tell me what I did wrong, and won't let it happen again.
This is the best he's got. Give him the ball. Hold up, hold up, hold up, hold up, hold up. You gotta bend those knees. Bend the knees. I want the elbow in. The elbow's still here. Where are you gonna get with the shot like that? I want the foot slightly pointed in. Hold that follow through and bend those knees. You still don't want to bend those knees. I've been on you about that. You don't hold your follow through. Don't want to hold your follow through. Don't want to bend your knees. Do you want to do? Which one is it? Give him the ball. Gutless. I think you're gutless.
On the outside, Kevin still looks cool as a cucumber, but his body is responding. His pulse rate has catapulted to 105, and with that comes increased adrenaline and muscle tension. Constant stress leads to constant tension. The muscles can't relax to let chemicals and electrical activity come back into balance. That means less oxygen, more lactic acid, more carbon dioxide, and slower nerve response. It's a chemical recipe that could lead to a mental meltdown.
When Coach Maddox first came out, I was trying to focus, but with him getting in my ear and yelling kind of threw me off, but at the same time, it made me want to prove him wrong, that I can knock the free throws down.
Okay, great. You think you're big time because you hit one free throw, right? Look at me when I'm talking to you, Keith. Look at me over here when I'm talking to you, in my eyes, so I know you're with me. And you already think you're God's gift to the world. 50%. That's the best you got, 50%? Now he's so big time he can't even listen. Can't be coached. Still got the elbow out. Still your release is.
It may look brutal.
You haven't done anything I've asked.
But it's brutally honest.
What the am I gonna do with you?
And for some athletes, it works.
I'm actually more prone to function better when somebody is screaming or yelling at me than when somebody is kind of quiet and reserved. I like to be told what I need to do.
Some guys need the screamer. Some guys don't respond well to it. I like the Bob Knight type, though.
I'm just tired of the I gotta deal with your attitude. Give him the ball. See what he's made of.
Surprisingly, Keevan's performance improves. For this set of free throws, he makes 8 out of 10.
Average. He's average. He's an average player.
Is he allowed to go?
He can go. Get him out of my face.
So, which style works best? Intimidation?
That's the best you got?
Or encouragement?
That's sweet. That's sweet. I love it. I love it. I love it.
In our test, Keevan made 7 free throws with positive encouragement and made 8 free throws while being berated.
And bend those knees.
But how would this test play out over a longer period of time? 2 perfect examples of these opposing coaching styles are Bobby Knight, tough, intimidating, and Mike Krzyzewski, nurturing and supportive. Over the last 5 years, Coach K's players have shot 68% from the line. The Generals players have actually performed even better at the line, responding to his tough love approach, making 71% of their free throws. 3% might not sound like a lot, but over the course of a 35-game season, that translates to over 25 points. And in a sport often decided by buzzer beaters, every point counts. Over the last 5 years, Coach Knight's teams have won 66% of their games that were decided by 3 points or less. Coach Krzyzewski's teams have won only 45% of those 3-point games. What's the bottom line? Your coach might seem out of control, but there's a method to his madness. When it comes to sports, the elements that a player can't control are too numerous to cover in one show. But we know this. Whether these variables are on the bench, behind the plate,
what was it? Make the call.
or in the stands, they're always in play when the game is on the line.